Hey guys, it's Ted with HDpiano. Here's how to play the intro and interlude to Skate by Silk Sonic. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that takes us into the verse. So in this lesson section, we're just learning this introduction, and it gets reused at two other points in the song, this exact same thing. And the rest of the lesson sections to this song are going to be at hdpiano.com if you're not already there. So what we're learning here is mostly just straight keyboard parts taken from the recording, and you hear them played by a Rhodes electric piano. It's a really popular keyboard instrument in this style of music. And then there are certain parts of this that are actually taken from other instruments, and we're kind of combine them into a piano arrangement. So like this little flourish at the end. As you can see, it's pretty tricky. And part of that is because it's actually combining things multiple instruments are playing. The strings play this melody, and then a guitar plays this melody. So that's going to be by far the hardest part of this section of this song. Let's start by learning the chords. We really only have two chords to worry about here. We're starting with an A minor 7. We'll play it like this. And then we're going to walk our way up to this chord. This is a C13 with a sus4. So here's the 13, here's the sus4, here's the 9, and here's the 7th of this chord. And that's a lot of fancy extended harmony. But it might help to just look for a B flat major 7 shape in your right hand, if you're familiar with that chord, and put a C in the bass. And this shape is a really popular way to play this sus5 chord. We're in the key of F major, and so this is the 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is a real popular shape for playing this kind of chord. We're actually going to see shapes just like this used in other keys later in this song. Okay, so those are the two main chord shapes we're moving between. Pretty much everything else here is just icing on the cake. So let's walk through it bit by bit. We start with this A minor 7, and then we're going to count 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm taking the same 4 notes here, but switching around their order to get this shape. Right? The bottom 2 notes of that same shape are now on top. So that's called an inversion. And then I make it sound fancy by rolling down like that. Okay, so that's the A minor 7. And then we're going to walk up. Now that sounds pretty crunchy out of context. And this is actually one of these moments where the music in a pop song doesn't quite follow traditional like classical music theory rules, but it actually sounds great. So I had to really sit with this moment because it isn't following those theory rules when I was figuring out the music from the recording, but I'm quite confident this is what's happening. The bass is playing this walk up from A up through B flat to C, and you'll see that happens again in a moment. Meanwhile, the strings play this melody. And especially when the strings are playing them way up here and the bass is way down here, it really works in the recording. And if you try and play something different, it won't fit. But if you're on the piano and you slow it down too much, out of context, you're going to hear these two notes against each other, and listen to how crunchy that sounds. So if you're practicing this and you're like, hey, I follow the exact notes in the video and it sounds awful, that's why. A lot of times something might sound bad if you take it out of context or slow it down too much, but it actually really works if it's just flying by. That's especially true of, like, we call this a dissonance, two notes that don't sound good together. So a dissonant interval between two notes like this you can get away with it if it's going by really quickly. So that's what's happening here. We have these two notes against each other, and then these two notes against each other, and then we land on our C chord. So again, that's B flat and C in the right hand, A and B flat in the left hand. Then we land on this sus chord, sus4 chord. And then we get this moving bass line, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. This right hand flourish is a lot easier than the first one because you don't have to change inversion. You're doing exactly the same notes, just 2 octaves higher. And now check it out. We mostly repeat the same thing, but our flourish is going to be in a different spot in the right hand. So instead of here, we're moving up to this. G, E, D, C. And if you're curious where those notes come from, you could think of them as mostly coming from A minor 7 with an added extension, like an 11th on the chord, or, it's also just all notes that come from the F major scale. And like I mentioned, we're in the key of F major. So this is our second flourish over the A minor 7 chord. And then this time we are following those rules of dissonance and consonance where we're just playing all the same notes. So it sounds really nice and clean the whole way through. A, B flat, and then landing on this chord. You'll notice that this is the same C13 sus4 chord we've been playing, except we're adding a note up here. And in order to reach all those notes, we're going to have our left hand help out on this B flat. Okay, that's it for the chords. So now we have our flourish to learn. And if this is too hard to play, don't feel bad about leaving it out. As I said, the keyboard doesn't actually play this on the recording. It's just such a fun part of this piece that I wanted to include it in case you're curious about what these notes are. So the top line, which is played in the strings, goes like this. 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. And then we're going to land on this D sus chord. That part is important. Okay, so that's the right hand. And then the left hand mirrors it has the same rhythm, but there's one moment where it's going to move in an opposite direction. That's the hardest part. So we start like this on F, E, F. Then we reverse that, E, F, E. And then we're going to match the right hand again. And go F, E, D. Then we jump to that chord. So in context, coming from that C chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, E, and a 1. There it is. Ooh, that's good practice for me too. I'm gonna have to be able to do 3 of those in the whole song performance, and honestly, it's pretty tricky. We're gonna see what happens. But anyway, that's such a fun part of the recording that I hope you enjoy at least seeing how that works, how those notes fit together. And I hope you have fun practicing this and getting this introduction under your fingers. I highly recommend practicing this along with the recording because there's so many really delicious different parts coming from different instruments interlocking in the recording, and it makes for this really great feeling to the production. So that's one of those things. You just can't recreate that on the piano alone, but what you can do is play the piano part along with the recording, and it's going to be really fun and also good for your rhythm. So that's it for part 1. Okay, great job on part 1. If you're on HDpiano.com already, you can click on the next video. If you're not, head on over so you can keep going with this song. If there's another song you want to learn, send us your ideas at requests.hdpiano.com. You can follow us on social media for a heads up about new lessons. And if you're on YouTube, drop us a comment because we love hearing from you. I'm Ted with HDpiano.com. Until next time.